Hello believers, and welcome to the show. This is a podcast where we speak to creative folk about what they think, how they think, and whether any of that has been affected by the X-Files. Slight spoiler, it usually has. You'll find me today hooked up to an EEG machine at the Boyd Associates Department of Abnormal Sleep. Let you figure that anagram out on your own. How you been getting on? How are you sleeping? A lot on our collective minds at the moment, isn't there? So imagine like me, you're not sleeping too well. Lettuce, apparently. Lettuce is the way forward. Eat some lettuce. That's supposed to help. I do wonder though, given the focus of today's episode is mostly about sleep, what I would do if I didn't have to get some shut-eye. Probably just spend more time doom scrolling on Instagram. You know, that's not healthy. Probably would be top of the Duolingo Diamond League though. Can't take that away from me. Anyway, I'm gabbing and there's no time to waste on that sort of frivolity because today's episode, believe me, includes a chat with the comedian, actor, writer, musician and self-proclaimed megamyth. I mean, I say self-proclaimed, but, you know, I'm saying that as well, as there's a lot of other people. Nick Helm. You'll know Nick from his ferocious stand-up work in shows such as Keep Hold of the Gold, the Fosters Edinburgh Comedy Award nominated Dare to Dream, and his recent touring shows. You might have some of his albums. You may have seen him on the TV in shows like Uncle, Nick Helm's Heavy Entertainment, 8 out of 10 Cats, Russell Howard's Good News, and Celebrity Mastermind. Nick today talks to me about Eastenders, Tony Todd, how he writes, learning to love stand-up again, living in the moment on stage, working through depression, what Tom Cruise films are actually about, and of course the X-Files Season 2, Episode 4, Sleepless, in which Mulder and his new partner Alex Krycek investigate a case where doctors and Marines who were part of a sleep deprivation experiment are being mysteriously killed off. Absolute pleasure to spend some time with Nick. Don't get to spend as much time with him as I would like, and to look to the future with him, as well as reminiscing about the past. As always, if you like our show, please do leave me a message, subscribe, review, follow us on X and Instagram and YouTube. In the meantime, sit back, relax, but don't nod off. There's no danger of that with this chat. Here's Nick. I usually start by asking people how they are. So, you know, how are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right, yeah. I'm all right. How's your tour going?
Yeah, it's going really well. I've sort of, I can't believe it really. Because it's come out of such like a terrible period of time for me.
Right.
And then I'm doing this show, and I'm going everywhere. Everyone seems to enjoy it. It's really weird. I've not done a show where it. I've done shows that a lot of people have liked, but I've not done shows where everyone is leaving as happy as they are. It's like, yeah. I'm not being an edgelord. And,
right.
And it's actually quite nice doing a show that makes everyone happy.
Are you have you noticed the sort of demographic of your audience changing then? Is it less people who watched Uncle than, I don't know, has it changed? Have you noticed it's changed at all?
Well, I don't know really, because I mean I haven't done loads of telly in I haven't done telly in kind of like, I've done bits and pieces. I did EastEnders the other week. I did a day on EastEnders.
No, I want to ask about that.
Did you see it?
I don't watch it. Only time I watch EastEnders is if I know somebody on it. But yeah, or at Christmas, and I just think, what, it's like Doctor Who. I go, wow, is this what like the UK are watching on a daily basis? But it's fab. So how did that come about then?
They just, I think, how did it come about? I think the guy that cast Uncle was doing casting on EastEnders, and then this, it was sort of like a comedy part came up, and
Right.
it was one scene, and they just said, "Do you want to do it?" And I was like, It also came up that the guy that was playing the policeman was Martin Treneman, who was in Phone Shop and In-Betweeners, but he played my landlord in the second series of Uncle.
Makes sense, yeah.
And there were about a handful of times when we were filming Uncle that I couldn't stop laughing, and one of them was with Martin Treneman, and we had a scene where he was in a doorway. We were in a hallway, and he was in a doorway, and it was shot over my shoulder because it was in a real tight space, so it was kind of like just over the shoulder stuff, and basically I just had to make sure that my shoulder wasn't shaking because I was laughing so much at him. And then this thing came in for EastEnders and said, "Do you want to do this thing? Martin Treneman's doing it." And I was just like, that is an absolute no-brainer. I would love to do that. I was like hoping that I'd get to see Albert Square, but my scene wasn't in Albert Square. But
you were Ostrich Man, is that right?
They said, "Do you want to do Ostrich Man?" And there was like a little bit of trepidation because
you're such a big fan of Bernie Clifton, I imagine.
Well, the Bernie Clifton thing, but I was thinking more like the Ricky Gervais in The Office thing. Because I would say that's even like for our generation, that's like more iconic. But I didn't have any say in any of that, so it was just like I was just like, lighten up, Nick. It's EastEnders. Just enjoy. Just enjoy. Don't overthink this. Don't overthink this one. Just enjoy the thing. And I said I'd do it, and then it was just like, oh, I'm in a scene with Billy Mitchell, and that was really exciting because he's like a legacy character. It wasn't just kind of like and one of the newer characters that because I haven't watched it in years, but like. It was like one of the characters that I really remember. And we went in and we filmed. And, it was brilliant. It was a lovely day. I'm in one scene. It was a comedy part.
Lovely.
We filmed it at Elstree. Well, you go to Elstree.
Yeah.
Do you know Colin Salmon?
Oh, the actor who's in the Bond films in the 90s.
Yeah. I mean, he's doing EastEnders at the moment. I was just sat in the lobby and Colin Salmon was sat next to me. I just watched like a retrospective on the Resident Evil films as well. And Colin Salmon just started he just started a conversation with me. And he was just like the nicest guy. Like basically, I was in one scene in EastEnders and you go out for a day and then they just treat you like everyone was just so nice.
That's so nice. It's nice when you meet people, and because I remember when I don't know what TV show we were doing together. I guess it must have been Live at the Electric, and Harry Hill was in the next studio, and Harry Hill just came out of filming and walked past, and he went, "Hi there," and I was like, "Oh, that's nice." It's just a normal, nice interaction from a human being.
Yeah, because we didn't always get that on Live at the Electric from other people that were on Live at the Electric.
No.
That is. It's just like I think it's always nice when you hear that people are nice. That always makes me feel great. But like the good stories are all in like who was the real shit though. But I really love it when people are nice, and I was just sat in there, and Colin Salmon, he just started this conversation with me, and I was just like, "Do you know who you are?" Do you know what I mean? And he was just being really like down to earth and everything like that, really lovely. And then you're out for the whole day, and then at the end of the day, we were filming on location in a park, and then we came back to Elstree, and then I was just like, "Am I allowed to see Albert Square?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure." So one of the runners, they took me to Albert Square, and they were filming just round the corner in another bit of the street. But
oh wow!
But yeah, I just took loads of photos. I got to see like the Queen Vic and Ian Beale's fish shop, and like a plaque where Camilla Parker Bowles and King Charles had visited. It was just like, oh yeah, it was. I haven't seen it in years, but it was a real, absolute, unapologetic thrill.
Yeah, I bet. I always the times I've tuned in is when it's doing something weird. Like someone will text me and say, "Have you seen that EastEnders is doing like a POV version and it's like, or it's doing something like, oh, they've gone Twin Peaks, and I try and, you know, and I quite like that they bring in different directors and do weird stuff with it very occasionally. But
Did they do a live one?
that's right, yeah, I think they did, yeah.
I feel like they do stuff every so often to like shake the format up.
Yeah. I mean, if you got offered a, you know, I was going to say the word residency, that's the wrong word, reoccurring part, would you take it?
What, on Eastenders?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't been offered one. I feel like, I mean, that was the thing. You'd have to do it on a case by case basis. Like
Sure.
From what I could work out, the hours are horrific. I think that even if you don't have a storyline at the time, you're kind of like on standby. So Perry Fenwick is the guy that plays Billy Mitchell.
Right.
And he was just absolutely fucking lovely, just brilliant. It was it was crazy. I've obviously, you know, in comedy you meet famous people a lot, but fucking Billy Mitchell was like a big one, I think. Do you know what I mean? He's been on your TV in some way or another for like 26 years, and so when you meet him, it's like, oh fucking hell, it's him. He was lovely, yeah, absolutely lovely. But I think from what I understand is like you get storylines, you get like maybe like 2 or 3 storylines a year, but when it's not you're still on standby to kind of like fill in last minute. So it's like you're kind of restricted on whether you can go on holiday and stuff like that.
And can you like do anything else? I mean, I presume I see a couple of them do panto, obviously, or different shows, but I presume you're like locked into a contract where you can't go off and do a feature film or something.
I guess it's just like endless because like Adam Woodyatt is the guy that plays Ian Beale, and he was in it since 1985, right?
Yeah.
So it gets to the point where it's just like, have you been Ian Beale longer than you've been Adam Woodyatt? Do you know what I mean? And and I guess it also becomes kind of like your rotation of what you have to do. Like, you know, you learn lines every day, you're shooting every day, you're doing multiple scenes every day. It's just like a lot of work. And then I doubt you're going home in the evening and watching it. So then it almost becomes kind of like a not like an office job, but it's like, you know, it becomes kind of like, it's like making your hobby a career. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, fucking hell. Now it's it feels like quite a slog. Now your question was, would I do it if they asked me if they asked me to do it? Would I do it? They haven't asked me, but when I took the part of Ostrich Man, Chris, I was slightly worried that if I do take this part, Ostrich Man, does that mean that I won't be able to come back in the future? But I think that the way that we handled the character of Ostrich Man, I think it left things open enough for in the future. I could come back to Albert Square, surely.
Yeah, and you can make it your own, I'm sure. And the Ostrich Man's just the kick-off point for, you know, there's more to the Ostrich Man than just running the marathon or whatever you were doing. There's a whole life there to explore.
Absolutely. And also, you know, they reuse characters in stuff all the time, don't they? There's that guy that plays Spock's dad, and he's in loads of episodes as different people in the original series.
Oh, yes, and it happens in the X-Files as well. You know, people rock up and it's like... And Doctor... I'm watching Doctor Who with the kids a lot, and I've badmouthed Doctor Who so much, but I'm really into it now. And there's several instances in that where it's like... Karen Gillan was in it earlier on, and then she's back as the assistant. Peter Capaldi was in it. They even make a joke about one of the assistants playing a character that was totally different to what the character was when she rocked up. So, it's, you know, the British general public are very forgiving, aren't they?
I think it's fine. I think that if it happens all the time, and if Ostrich Man, you know, or I popped up in another episode of EastEnders, sans ostrich outfit, I think people would like. I think people would either. They'd piece it together that I was playing the same character or I was playing a different character. I think the character that they created for Ostrich Man, I think it's flexible enough. I think it's resilient enough that it could take it could take multiple storylines and it would be fine.
You know, when you are touring, do you find much time to write, or do you not write at all, or do you never turn it off? You always like think things coming to you and think, "Oh, I'll write that down and use that later," or is it very much like all your energy's going into that night's performance?
Yeah, I sort of feel bad. Well, it's not just writing when you're on tour, but it's doing anything. It's like you've got this amazing opportunity to see the country and to, visit every city or town that you're in. But really, the show is like 2.5 hours of high energy, and then I do like between half an hour and an hour of merchandise and signing at the end of the show, where I meet everyone.
Do you know what? It didn't dawn on me that you'd be on stage for that long. I don't know why, just because I'm so like ingrained in an Edinburgh Fringe format that of course you would be, that it's like Seinfeld thing of like, you are tonight's entertainment. And of course if people are paying ticket money, they're coming out for a night's entertainment. But that must be like, especially for what you do, is like totally grueling. Is it? You're not just knackered.
Well, it's funny. Like the first week we did Edinburgh, we did Scotland, so we did Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Glasgow. So the travelling was, it took 10 hours to get to Aberdeen, and then you get to Aberdeen. And did we drive in one day? Maybe we drove in one day. We got up to Aberdeen, we unloaded, we did the show. But like you were at the venue at 4:30, 5 o'clock every day. You set up the lights and the sound, and then you do the sound check about 6 o'clock, 6 till 7. The audience come in at 7 till 8. You do the first half of the show, which is 8 till 9, and then you have a half-hour break or 20-minute break. Second half of the show is about an hour and 10 minutes, and that takes you up to about 10:30. And then you do meet and greets, and or like I sell merch at the end of the show, but like I just take photos or I sign people's tickets or whatever like that, and that takes about an hour. And then by the time you get back to the hotel, it's like midnight. So you've done like a big day, especially if you've got to travel in the day. But when we did that first week in Scotland, I was absolutely fucked. After doing 3 gigs, I was absolutely fucked. And then the next week we did 4 gigs, 4 shows, and that fucked me. And then the next week we did another 4 shows, and I was fine. And I think like I've got 5 shows coming up in, is it the week after next? In 1 week, which that sounds like, that's 12.5 hours in 5 days plus travel.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm actually impressed with how quickly I've kind of snapped back into it. And the show doesn't, like at the end of the show, I'm kind of like buzzing now. I'm like awake and alert and happy.
Great.
I'm never like getting back to the hotel and just crashing out. But when I do have a day off, then I'm using it. But in terms of like writing stuff, I have ideas all the time for stuff. But like I've kind of given up on like writing stuff down, like setting aside time and doing it.
Did that ever work for you then? Did you ever, I presume you had deadlines you had to work to, and it's like, right, I've got to sit down and write this. But have you ever been a sort of person who, like you say, would set out 2 hours and just sit at your desk and hammer something out?
No, and I can't. If I had when I used to have like a Guardian article or something to write, and I would sort of have to, right, I've got an hour, and I'd like smash that out. But and sometimes if I have like a really good idea, if I've got like, if I'm writing something specifically for something like 8 out of 10 Cats or something like that, I would smash it out, and it would take me like maybe a week to write a song from beginning to end. And I'd do that. But like, in terms of like my personal stuff, what I tend to do is just, I'm always sort of like thinking about it in the back of my head, and then it's like I see it like I'm problem solving. So there'll be like a bit that doesn't have an ending to it, or there'll be a script that I'm writing and the characters don't quite make sense, and I'll just be thinking about it all the time. And then when I solve something, I'll make a note of it in my phone, and my phone notes have got like 100 different categories in them. And so it's like, oh, this is like the file for songs. So maybe I'll come up with a title for a song. and I'll write that down. I'll put it in my song file, or maybe I'll come up with like a rhyming couplet or a lyric or a concept for a song, and I'll put that into songs. And then maybe there'll be a character moment for a script, and I'll put that into scripts. And then when I need to write something like for instance, this tour now, the very last thing I was going to do was I was going to write some poems, and then when I got up to Aberdeen, I was just like, I haven't had time to write poems, so I just went through the poetry file on my phone, and I found a couple of poems that would work, and then it turns out that those are the poems that are in the show now, and it's just like, oh great, they work perfectly. Right. They did the job that I wanted, and they were sort of like there on standby. So I'm always sort of like, throwing ideas into these buckets on my phone, and then and I'll get ideas whenever. Do you know what I mean? It'll be like, whatever point in the day, and then when I actually have to sit down and write something, I'm never starting from scratch.
Yeah. Is there an element of you that sort of feeds off, I guess chaos is the wrong word, but like a need to just get something out? Because I remember when we were hanging around doing comedy and that, and then when I was playing in the Helmets, it always seemed like, you'd be 3 hours out from the gig, and it was like, what we're gonna do, and you're like, just figuring it out. So like a couple of hours out, but then it was all, and then you get on stage and it had just like something had happened by magic. And I know it's not magic because you're putting in a lot of hard work and literal sweat and tears, but is there an element of just you enjoying that process?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that I feel like when I'm on stage, it's organised chaos where what is happening is absolute bonkers and chaos, but I've planned for it. Yeah. So I sort of thrive off of that spontaneity, and I think that especially like when you're doing TV, they're like a week in advance saying, can you give us a script of what you're going to be doing, and can you tell us exactly how it's going to work? Yeah. And I'll be like, I can't do that because I feel like if you lock yourself in that far in advance, then it's almost like you're absolutely shackled to it. And what I like to do is, and what I've learned on this show as well, especially with tours and Edinburgh, is that my favourite part of the whole process is the work in progress part, where you're going up on stage with 5 ideas and then you're trying to make them all work. And I think my least favourite is probably, week 3 of Edinburgh, where you're basically just doing a monologue now, and audiences, you can have good audiences, you can have bad audiences, you can have quiet audiences, but basically the script is the script, and then you're just doing it. And what I've learned since the pandemic is that I'm just basically trying to cater for my strong points, and my strong points are generally the stuff that I enjoy the most. And so with this tour, it's like I've not overly scripted it. Not that I ever script it, but you get used to the patterns every day. The speech patterns, you just repeat it, the way you've been doing it.
Yeah. Do you still find the whole concept of Edinburgh and the Edinburgh Fringe worthwhile to you as a performer? And I don't know, because I talk to a lot of people, because I'm based up here and I still work with a lot of theatre and comedians, and just the idea of people, especially from working class backgrounds, trying to bring a show up and trying to do a show. I know there's a free fringe in that, but if you were maybe starting out today, would you still see the Edinburgh Fringe as something that's like of benefit for you to do as a performer?
It's complicated because without the Edinburgh Festival, my drama teacher when I was 16 years old took me and my drama class up to Edinburgh, and we did Romeo and Juliet every day for a couple of weeks, and it completely changed my life. And I went up and I saw like all this comedy when I was up there, and I didn't necessarily make the decision, I want to be a comedian, but I did make the decision, I want to come up to Edinburgh and do that again. And and I used to write plays, and I've written a musical, and I've written all this stuff, and I've taken it up to Edinburgh. And when I started doing stand-up comedy, it all clicked for me, and I was just like, this is what I want to do. And I owe the Edinburgh Festival and stand-up comedy. I mean, it saved my life. It's given me a career. I'm so grateful for it. I think it's brilliant. And it's given me all these opportunities. And through Edinburgh, you know, I got my part in Uncle, and you know, I got Live at the Electric. Me and you got to be on telly, and you know, I got my Blaps that you were in. You know, I've had all this stuff from Edinburgh that's just been absolutely incredible for me. If I was starting today, I don't think I could have afforded to do it. I think you know, I funded my Edinburgh shows by working in a pub, or doing or working in. Doing like data entry. Do you know what I mean? I'd have these terrible, this like absolutely mind-numbing 9-to-5 job, and I'd take all that money and I'd spend it on going up to the Bedlam Theatre and taking my musical up in 2008. That's how I did that. But I just don't think that, especially it's become like a thing where it's like comedy's always been fairly elitist. But I think it was making real kind of movements to sort of like making it a little bit more open for everyone else. I think there's alternatives. Basically, what I personally felt was that after the pandemic, everyone got greedy and everyone tried to make as much money when they came back as they could. And it just froze a load of people out of the industry. Accommodation's expensive, venues are expensive, shows are expensive, marketing's expensive, PR's expensive. Everything is expensive up in Edinburgh, and the person that loses out every single time is the performer. Everyone seems to make money off of it except for the performer, and it's I think it's really sad. I think that there's other festivals out there like the Camden Fringe and stuff like that, but like they don't have they don't create the same opportunities. What I would say is that this tour that I'm doing at the moment, this is the only tour I've ever done that hasn't started off as an Edinburgh show. And because of that, normally what I'd do is I'd write an hour for Edinburgh, and then I'd like pad it with another half hour, and then I'd do 2 45 minutes with an interval. But this, I've like written it as like, no, this is part 1 and this is part 2, and there's an interval all planned into it. Aaron, my tech, works in theatre, and he's been saying that it's Act 1 and Act 2. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah. I am very clever, but I've really enjoyed the process of writing a show without Edinburgh. But I will always love Edinburgh. I'll always want to be included in Edinburgh. I'd always like to go up and do something there. I think if you've got the ability to do it, it's still a great place. I just think it's really unfair and it's too expensive. And if it carries on that way, you know, it's going to take away a lot of opportunities for a lot of people, and we're going to end up with the same voices.
Yeah, and I guess it removes an element of spontaneity. Now, you know, I don't imagine when me and Nathaniel were speaking, it was like, you know, I always look at younger acts now, and they've always seemed to have got their shit together, but because they have to, you know, because it's like they're almost, you know, you can't go up to Edinburgh with an idea like you used to. I don't think, from my experience anyway, seeing people that's like, it's got to be straight off the ground great, or you've got to have a bit of profile getting here, because you just, you know, you can't afford to take that chance, really.
When we started, like, it was completely different. I mean, I don't think we started with the aim to get on telly. I started with the aim to make some friends and to get out of the house on Thursday nights. Do you know what I mean? And then the fact that I ended up on telly, do you know what I mean, was like, oh right, well, I didn't know that was possible, and now let's see what else is possible. And everything was kind of like, oh well, I've done this, so why don't I do an album? Or I've done an album, why don't I try and, you know, write a short film or something like that? But it was never like, this is the aim. When we started, started about 5 or 6 years out of when Live at the Apollo started. And when Live at the Apollo was on, that changed your life overnight. Do you know what I mean? If you were on Live at the Apollo, your tour would sell out. And the industry is just completely different. So I think that we work really hard, but the parameters of what that work is have completely changed. And then obviously again, since the pandemic, you're not just required to have 20 minutes and get yourself to a gig. You've got to do social media and
right. Yes.
You've got to kind of do your own PR. You've got to do your own kind of. You've got to film stuff. You've got to edit stuff. You've got to write stuff.
Yeah.
You've got to be just constantly promoting it. It's turned into sort of a thing that's not really what I liked about it. I'm not good at that stuff. What I'm good at, or what I think I'm good at, is getting up on stage and making people laugh and writing interesting material or having interesting takes on material. And
you're talking about having a difficult pandemic. Was that part of that transition process? Did you find that difficult? And
what with comedy?
Don't need to talk about it.
Yeah, just in general. And how was I've not seen you perform for a little while, but how much of that pandemic experience is into your recent material?
I wrote a show about the pandemic, but that was really kind of that was really a collection of all of the material that I wrote during the pandemic. And I was going into the pandemic, I was halfway through a tour that was about mental health. And then during the pandemic, my mental health went crashing down. I was terrible. It was worst, all-time worst. So I cancelled that tour because it was literally, it was hanging over me. I don't know if you remember, but I was literally meant to go on tour a week after lockdown started.
Right.
And then what happened was, it was well, you're not going on tour this week, but you might be going on tour next week. And then it was well, you're not next week, but it might be the week after next. And it might be, and it was just
God, yeah.
Am I going to go on tour or not? And if I am, I've got to relearn the show, and we're all in a pandemic. We're wearing masks. People are dying. Do you know what I mean? And it was just and I was just thinking, any minute now, I'm going to have to go off and do this show. And I was ill. I was mentally ill. And so I just was let's pull that. And then out of the pandemic, I wrote this, I had this show that was about the pandemic. I did that. And then while I was doing that, I was just I just want to start enjoying my life. Do you know what I mean? And and so really, this show isn't about the pandemic, but what has happened is the pandemic. What happened was kind of I didn't get as much TV work coming through, and I was okay, right. Well, if this is the situation that I'm in, and really I've got to rely on live stuff as my main income, and I hate doing live stuff, then I'm absolutely fucked. So I was just I've got to teach myself to start enjoying live stuff. And so that's what I've really done. I've taken the fact that I like the spontaneity and I like the chaos and I like all of that. And what I don't like is regimented, scripted material. And I've retaught myself how to do comedy in a way that I enjoy and in a way that I'm not spending all week getting nervous about one gig. I don't think about it until I get to the venue, really. And I'm just so happy with it at the moment. It's the happiest I've ever been on stage, and it's the happiest I've ever been as a stand-up comedian. I just think something's really clicked in the last couple of years with my performance, and I'm really happy. So I think from the pandemic, that's a really positive thing that's happened to me. And what I always loved about comedy in the first place was that you're your own boss. And then as soon as you start getting sucked into kind of financial rewards and the sexiness of television and all of that, then you suddenly have to start asking permission to do stuff.
Have you got a few things still cooking though? A long time ago, you talked about doing a TV show, White Thunder, which was going to be essentially you. What I got from it is you doing Highway to Heaven / Knight Rider, and I could just see it without you saying any more. It all just went, I thought, yes. Is that still something that's kind of percolating around? And are you I know you've had some, award-winning short films. Is making a film, a feature film in there as well? Is that something you're thinking about doing?
Yeah, I think during the pandemic, I sort of got very depressed about. I turned 40. Do you know what I mean? I had kind of like this thing, which is like, oh, I'm not like going to live forever. And there was that point where you kind of like go, hang on a minute. Between 30 and 40, that was really quick. 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, then you're out. Do you know what I mean? And it was like,
Yeah, right.
it was just like fucking out. So there were kind of some ideas that I sort of like let go of, and some that are kind of like put to one side. But what's just happened recently, like maybe this year, is that, I've started, through comedy, I've started kind of gaining my confidence back. And and now I've got, like White Thunder, I think was a product of its time. It was sort of like, it was a pastiche on kind of 80s and 90s adventure action series. And it kind of like had a place in time. So I kind of parked it for a bit. But now I've kind of like, within the last week, I've kind of like worked out a way that would kind of like make it more relevant and make it work now. And so like, I have ideas that go round and round and round, but also it's kind of like, what's the most realistic thing? So the aim to do is to get this tour done, and with the money I make off the tour, take a couple of months off and write a screenplay, write a pilot, and finish my album, and then that's it. And then once I've done that, I can move on to the next stuff. But mentally, I've not really been able to do any work like that for years, and I've been able to like catch elements here and there when I've been able to, but really I've been trying to not kill myself, and that's the reality of it. But I'm feeling so much better mentally at the moment, and all of these ideas have sort of like exploded in my head now, and I'm feeling more creative than I've really ever been, because I'm in a better I'm in a better headspace to kind of be able to do something about it. So
great.
So I'm feeling I'm feeling excited about it all for like the first time in a long time.
I know you do boxing as well, and when did you start doing that? And I presume that, like, I mean, everybody has. I'm not one for a lot of exercise, but I started running quite recently, and I've finally got why people do it, and why it feels good. But has that had a big effect on how you feel mentally?
I mean, the reason I got into boxing was I did a milk advert, and I had to, and I worked with a stunt guy, and it wasn't an advert for milk. It was 3 short films about getting up early in the morning, right? And on one of them, I worked with a personal trainer, because he gets up early in the morning, and we got on really well. And then I filmed my food show, Eat Your Heart Out, where I gained like 3 stone in 4 months, right? And then after filming it, I was just like, I need to lose some weight. And I was like, oh, I got on really well with that personal trainer. So I got back in contact with him, and then he was boxing, and then we were boxing. And then I did that for about 2 years. And then I got to a point where I was just like, do you know what? I actually just don't want to get hit in the face. So
yes, fine.
So I did a bit of running as well. What the boxing taught me was that exercise is so incredible for your brain and for your self-confidence and your self-worth. And there's that thing when you're like feeling like depressed or down, and somebody always says, "Oh, go for a walk outside," and you just want to tell them to fuck off. But it turns out it's true. If you go for a walk outside, you go outside, you breathe in the air, and you do some exercise, and you do feel better. It doesn't like cure, long-term mental health illness, but like it does ease stuff off, and it does help you deal with stuff a lot better. So that was my big takeaway from that. I need to get a personal trainer basically, because I don't do it by myself. But as soon as I finish this tour, I guess I'll start again. And I feel really good about being in my 40s. How do you feel about it? Are you in your 40s yet? You must be.
I am. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I turned 40 in November, and I feel like it's sort of, you're allowed to be you, aren't you? Now it's like the whole 30s process is, your body telling you that it's okay, and every day I say something stupid. I just feel kind of like it's okay to just like what you like, and I'm not going to know everything, and I'm not going to know, what the coolest thing is anymore, and that's just okay. That's okay. And it's not a sort of resignation. I think it's just like feeling quite happy and kind of like done all this stuff in my life and met all these different people, and that's I'm justified to be here as much as other people are. But are you? I mean, how have you? Yeah, you feel good about it, do you?
Well, I feel like I've earned every year. Do you know what I mean? I don't feel like I've wasted my life.
Yeah.
I feel like I was there for it, but I also feel like, like you said, like a friend of mine came to see me in Plymouth the other day, and she brought her 15-year-old kid with her, and we had a photo together at the end, and her, just me and the boy, and he was being really cool for school, and I was just like, I was like screaming and throwing my arms up around and sort of making an ass of myself because he was so so reluctant to sort of look like he was enjoying himself. So I was making a tit out of myself, and it's just like, I don't care. Do you know what I mean? I don't care anymore. Yeah. And also I feel like I mean, I started this new medication at the beginning of the year. I don't know. I haven't told you this, right?
No, don't think so. No.
I got diagnosed with bipolar at the beginning of the year, right? And he put me on this new medication, and it's sort of changed. It's changed my life, but also to the point where I'm sort of getting to know myself for the first time. I don't drink, and I'm on this new medication. It's settling my brain down, and it's kind of like this personality that I've got is coming out, and it's kind of like, I'm quite a very chilled out, gentle kind of person at the moment. And it's like, I hope this is me. I hope this is who I am. Because I'm sort of relieved that it's like, I don't know, there was a period of time when I was on stage, and I've always been what I am on stage. But there's a period of time in my 30s where I had to work out what the difference between being on stage and being off stage was. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'm this loud, obnoxious person on stage. It's like, how much of that do I need to have off stage in order, it's like a persona that you have in public. Because it's kind of like, I don't know, you're kind of like, why do people like me? Why do people want to hang around with me?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of, I've noticed the change in you for the better, when we met up in recent, fringe in Edinburgh, and you said, I just put my headphones in and I go and do my show, and then I come back, and I'm not, because you're not drinking, you're not, you just see the people you want to see, and you're not part of that whole circus. And no, I just thought it was such a like, and other actor friends as well who were just like, they go, and just because you're approaching it like a job doesn't mean that it has to become like a 9 to 5, and I thought I felt happy for you, that you've seen good.
I feel like I'm finally finding some peace. I've always struggled with who I am, with myself, and I feel like I'm finally finding some peace and working through, like, working out who I am, and also working through a lot of stuff from my past and stuff. So yeah, I'm sort of in a really good place at the moment, I think.
So thank you so much for watching this episode. And the episode we're going to talk about is season 2, episode 4, Sleepless, directed by Rob Bowman, written by Howard Gordon. A little pricey about the opening, the intro to this episode. It starts with a helicopter shot of New York. I'm guessing that's stock footage. And then we get a man in his apartment, is in his pajamas. He thinks there's a fire. There's a fire outside. Calls the fire department on the phone, says, "For God's sakes, hurry." And it is some of the best firework I've seen from the X-Files since the episode Fire, which is also a banger. Then we get a shot of Candyman himself, Tony Todd, walking down the stairs as the apartment's being evacuated, the flats are being evacuated. Firefighters turn up, smash the door in. There's no fire, but the old man's dead on the floor with a fire extinguisher in front of him. Cut to titles. Firstly, what did you think of this episode? And also, what is your relationship like with the X-Files?
I'm a massive Tony Todd fan.
Yes.
I think I was so happy that you asked me to. I don't remember this episode the first time round, but I guess I probably might not have even known who Tony Todd was.
Fine.
Yeah, I don't think I would have seen Candyman yet, or maybe I would. Maybe I'd have seen Candyman. Candyman's such an absolutely. It's an incredible film, but it's so bleak and depressing. I think it would have
Oppressive, isn't it?
Oh, but like it's so skillful the way they do it. I mean, it's incredible. Just an absolute. I mean, I can't stress that enough. Absolutely incredible. 1995 would have been when he was in The Rock, though, right? That was when Tony Todd made The Rock.
Oh, right. I mean, I first saw Tony Todd in the remake of Night of the Living Dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think I probably saw that remake before I'd actually seen the original. So I was kind of going off that. He's got so much gravitas in this and just a little look.
I started watching The X-Files when it first started.
Really, yeah.
I really, really, really fancied Gillian Anderson. I think a lot of I think a lot of our generation, she was one of the formative TV characters.
Yeah, there's that FHM cover as well that really sealed it for a lot of.
I had a giant poster of that Rolling Stone cover where they're in bed together.
Yes, right. Yeah,
I had that on my wall, and oh god, I just loved her. So I watched it. Was the cigarette smoking man, Deep Throat guy? Was he only in the first series?
No, he's in it. Well, Deep Throat gets killed at the end of the first series. And now we've got in this episode Mr. X. So this is Mr. X played by Stephen Williams.
Isn't he in Jason Goes to Hell?
Yes. And he's also in Blues Brothers he's in.
Fuck, he's in Blues Brothers. God,
Blues Brothers.
It was so funny because I saw him in Jason. I watched all the Friday the 13th films last year, and I saw him. Yeah, I'm pretty cool. Or maybe it was this year. No, it was last year, and he was in it, and I was just like, where do I know him from? And then he popped up in the X-Files, and I was like, where do I know him from? And I was like, oh, I know him from Jason X, and I know him from X-Files. But yeah, he was in Blues Brothers as well. Yeah, so I really was into the X-Files up until the point when I started drinking, and then if you like X-Files was kind of like good when it first started. It started, and then the Outer Limits got rebooted. Do you remember?
Vaguely, yeah.
And the X-Files kind of worked quite episodically for the first couple of seasons.
I mean, the good thing about this episode is it's like, yes, you've got a lot of introductions of different characters, and also it's sort of a bit of a like melting ground segue between, the Monster of the Week episodes, but also because you've got the introduction of X, Mr. X talking about, bigger government conspiracies. It's a little bit of a segue into like the overall aliens myth arc, and the government. I guess we should say the idea behind this particular episode is that there's been some government experiments on sleep deprivation, and the people they've been experimenting on is Marines, and this particular Marine Corps from Vietnam. But yeah, we do get like, as well as X, we also get the introduction of Nicholas Lee as Krychek, who's great, who looks like he's wearing a lot of makeup, but he's great actually. He's like really plays it. I don't know, like he says he's green himself in a lot of it. He's a newbie. He sort of plays it like a fan of Mulder, and it's also a shame, and I mean spoiler here, that they reveal it at the end of this one episode that he's in the thrall of the smoking man is like an inside man, and he's basically just there to report on Mulder and send them off the tracks. And I would have liked that to have continued on, that sort of mystery to have
Continue
To
on
drag
for
it
another
out
couple
a
of
bit.
episodes. But
Yeah, because he's like, oh, it's an interesting dynamic. It was quite warming to him as a character. There's Scully's relegated to teaching some students and just being shot from the waist up because she's heavily pregnant. So, I would have liked that to have been kind of drawn out a little bit more. But, they did what they can. They've obviously got a lot to kind of get through on the X-Files. But also, we've got Skinner in this, and cigarette smoking man, who you mentioned, and your favourite, Jonathan Grease.
Wolfman.
Yeah,
Wolfman
From both Fright Night 2
Monster Squad.
and Monster Squad.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's the name? What's the name of that agent? What's his name? Krycek. So Krycek. I was surprised that Krycek was in this episode because it feels like it's quite early. I think I probably lost it about season 4 or 5, where it got to a point where if you missed one episode, then you were fucked because too much stuff had happened. And then it became like, then I became a very casual viewer, and then it was like, I'm out. I can't do it anymore. And then I guess maybe, I think the film might have come out when we were at university. I think the film came out in 1998, didn't it? Because this is how I do it, Chris. Film came out in 1998 because I had a Big Lebowski poster out of Total Film, and on the other side was an X-Files poster.
Yes, wonderful.
And so you could also go like 1997 because I had a Lost World poster, and on the other side was Batman and Robin, and there was also a Men in Black poster that had something else on the back of it. But like I know those films were from 97. But so I kind of like lost my way with X-Files. But this episode was really, so I felt like they used to be more self-contained. I think coming back and watching this Tony Todd episode, I think there's loads of humour in it. And I think that that even though they're very official, there's loads of warmth. That's what kept people coming back, wasn't it? But there's like loads of warmth. There's that phone conversation that he has that Mulder and Scully have where he's like saying that he's got this new guy and she's really jealous of the new guy, but it's sort of like all about what's not said. And then at the end, they sort of like he says, oh, this guy is really great. He doesn't keep asking me questions. I didn't think it was going to be. And she goes like, oh, you think he's better than me? And he goes, I didn't think he'd be as good as he was, or something like that. And then they kind of have this awkward kind of pause at the end where they both want to talk. And instead of her saying, right, I've got to go, she goes, well, you better be going. She didn't even take responsibility for ending the phone call because she doesn't want the phone call to end, but she puts the responsibility on him because he's got to end the phone call. And it was just like, I just think there's like little moments like that are really kind of like lovely.
I thought that was fantastic as well, and it was it's sort of preceded by really nice bits of photography in this. So she's doing a kind of expositional voiceover, which she does sometimes because she thinks the audience is not going to be able to follow what's going on, and we get a shot of the computer reflected in her glasses and they're blue, so that's a really interesting shot. And then there's another bit where Krycek and Mulder were running to the station, and the camera swoops down like I don't think they're late to get to this train, but it's like they're running for some reason, and the camera swoops down and just like follows them run to go and apprehend someone in the station, which was really nice. And there's a few bits like that where it's like it's better than it needs to be, and that sort of love and attention that's put into making this more than just an episode of TV. I think that's why people kind of keep coming back to it.
Even going back to it, I mean, it doesn't look like NCIS or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? It looks like a proper show. The other bit I remember really liking was when Scully's been kind of she's been examining a body, and it's the guy that thought he was on fire, and Scully and Krycek come in. Mulder and Krycek come in, and Mulder looks at the body and then goes over to talk to Scully, and then Krychek in the background, he's sort of like, he gags.
Vomits, doesn't
he kind of coughs, but he's like sick in his own mouth. But you don't even get a close-up of him. And the reaction between Fox, Mulder and Scully, the reaction between them is so understated, because it's not like he rolls his eyes and goes like rookie, but he just sort of like looks at her and kind of like, there's like a beat where they don't even react. There's just a beat where they're listening to him gagging and then they carry on. I just thought it was really cool, because it wasn't like, they didn't throw him under the bus, but they kind of like, they have an acknowledgement like, who's this guy? Do you know what I mean? It was...
Yes, right.
Yeah, because they often say that Mulder and Scully are like a bit square, actually. You know, a bit like the prefects. A lot of the time they're playing it like, oh, we're the big boys here. Even though I guess it's a bit like Tom Cruise, where in all Cruise films he's like an outsider on the inside, and they're sort of outsiders on the inside. You know, by the end of every Tom Cruise film, everybody's come round to his way of thinking, but he's still essentially on the inside. You know.
Yeah, I've never thought about Tom Cruise films like that, but that's what it is about them. Yes,
that's
that's
how I'm watching them anyway.
You've just absolutely nailed the thing that's been irritating me. Right. So the basic gist of this. Do you do spoilers?
Oh yeah.
So the basic gist of this is that Tony Todd hasn't slept in 26 years or 24 years.
24 years, yeah.
And he's going around and he's doing mind tricks on people and making them...
I couldn't figure that out, because there's some biblical aspect, because the members of his Vietnam squad, army squad, call him the preacher because he'd always got a Bible on him. But I didn't know if the suggestion was, like you say, that he was going around and implanting these visions in people's heads, in which case there is a supernatural. It's like, without that, there's not really a supernatural element to this particular episode. It's just like everybody's sleep deprived and they all feel so guilty about how many people they killed, innocent people they killed in Vietnam, that they're seeing shit and just killing themselves. But yeah, I think you're right. It's like he does have some kind of metaphysical power to implant an idea of a dream in someone's head, because because Mulder says at one point when he goes to the lab, he really says something on the nose like, oh, so it's actually possible to alter someone's dreams. And you go, oh, right, so maybe that's it. He has the power to kind of, he's like a Freddy, you know, he infiltrates people's dreams. But
or maybe he's just, you know, because he hasn't slept in such a long time, he's been able to access this other part of his brain. The episode, it reminded me of Young Sherlock Holmes. Have you ever seen that?
I've never seen that, no.
You've never seen Young Sherlock Holmes? Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
No.
What? It's Chris Columbus wrote it, I think, and did Joe Johnston direct it? And it's got the first...
Is this a film or a TV show?
It's a film. It was like a Steven Spielberg produced. It's like an Amblin 1987 film, and it's about young Sherlock Holmes going to school and meeting. He goes to boarding school and he meets Watson, and they go on their first adventure. It's absolutely incredible. It's got the first ever CGI character in it, which is a stained glass window that comes to life, and basically there's a Egyptian cult that have these poisoned blow darts, and they shoot them into people's necks, and they have these visions where they think they're on fire or they think they're being attacked by something, and they end up running into the street and getting run over by like a horse and cart and stuff like that. And then this young Sherlock Holmes, you know, it's not like this is a kid's film about Sherlock Holmes. It's quite dark, and the nightmare sequences are really kind of like, you know, quite pushing the boundaries of what you could have in a kid's film.
Well, this looks great. Barry Levinson, director, and I mean, it's a story. Yeah, Chris Columbus, and it's a story by Arthur Conan Doyle. I mean, I don't know how much truths in
in
that.
I mean,
whether
it's
just his characters.
it's really like it's better than it has any right to be, and it's great. If you haven't seen it, Chris, you will fucking love it. It's brilliant. But
Right.
this episode of the
Yeah.
X-Files is sort of similar to that in some ways. Like you were saying, Tony Todd is really good. He has a really great monologue at the end, or he has a
Yes.
really great scene at the end. But you were saying about the Wolfman.
Yes, Jonathan Grease, I'm going to say, or Grease, yeah, who's not in it enough. He crops up.
One incredible scene, and
Yeah.
they come in and he goes, "You're going to shoot me. You're going to shoot me," and it's like he genuinely thought that they were going to come in and kill him, and they're like, "No, we're not going to kill you." But just imagine that. You're so paranoid that these two guys come in, and he's literally thinking, "This is it. This is the moment I die." And he goes, "You're going to kill me," and they don't. And then they have a conversation with him.
He's such a good actor, and I'd not seen Friday Night 2, and I'd not, to my shame, seen Monster Squad, and I've now rectified both of those.
Oh, you
after
see both of
mentioned
them? I never really liked Monster Squad growing up because there's a fat kid in it, and
Yes.
and I got bullied relentlessly at school.
There's some very off-colour homophobic slurs in there as well, which I had to explain to my 8-year-old is definitely not suitable schoolyard parlance.
Kind of like it was kind of like the Goonies do the Universal Monsters, but it's got that Shane Black, Fred Decker kind of thing where they're trying to be edgelords, but it kind of has aged really badly. And I think Monster Squad's all right, but I was watching Fright Night 2. Fright Night is one of my all-time favourite films, the original one. And I think it's also because it's linked to Planet of the Apes because Roddy McDowall's in both of them, and I just love Roddy McDowall so much, and I love Fright Night so much. Fright Night 2 isn't as good, but I was watching it and there was the Wolfman in it. I was just like, hang on a minute, I swear this guy's been a werewolf in something else. And then I Googled it, and in the same year, I think he was a werewolf in something else as well. But like in the same year, he was the werewolf in. Because when I was watching it, I was like, is he the wolf at the beginning of The Howling? But that is what's his face out of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Robert. Yeah, he's in Inner Space as well, isn't he?
The cowboy. I make loaves with my boots on.
And he was the coach in the Wonder Years. Yeah, him. So I thought that was him at the beginning of The Howling, but it wasn't. And then it was just like, no, it was him out of Fright Night 2 and The Monster Squad, which were both something like 1987.
Yeah, he's so good, and he's just, especially in Fright Night, I was like, I don't know, I have this thing where it's like, I had a concept of what Fright Night 2 is going to be like in my head. Like, I'd seen the first one.
What did you think it was going to be?
I don't know, just a lot cheesier and a lot just more straightforward. And I was really blown over by it because there's like a slow motion roller skating vampire in it, which is really strange. It's a lot gorier than I thought it was going to be. There's some fantastic effects work, like specifically at the end when there's like bodies disintegrating. It's really horny, like, you know, like the vampires are really sexy, and his partner in it's fantastic as well. But it's just one of those, I was like, this is great, and it's really fast moving. And yeah, our friend Jonathan is it's just a really great performance from him. And like you say, Roddy McDowall's like great as well. And I really like the fact that you have this lead character who's just doubting himself for the entire film. And that was more interesting to me than the first film, where this becomes more about like, is this, you know, to quote Jamie Lee Curtis, about trauma, you know, is it about trauma? And I'm probably reading it into it too deep there, but I thought it was absolutely fantastic. A hidden gem.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as good as the original, I think, but I mean, I think also I really like the girlfriend in the original, and she's not in the sequel. And but yeah, and also he's got this horrible mullet type haircut in the. I think they both do. I think Roddy McDowall has it kind of like party down the back. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's got that guy out of Terminator that gets killed at the beginning, doesn't he? He gets punched in the chest.
Yes, who's also in the X-Files, who plays the crew cut man.
Yeah, that's
so he's
right.
like
fucking hell, it's all circular, man. It all comes back to the X-Files.
Yeah, and another connection. I mean, again, I didn't realise when I was putting Friday Night 2 on, is it's the soundtrack's by Brad Fiedel, the Terminator soundtrack dude. So I've inadvertently ended up like becoming a bit of a Brad Fiedel completist, because I watched another film. It was like a Canadian TV version of Rambo with Michael Ironside in it, and I can't remember the name of it, but you'd really dig that. It's about a mother trying to protect her daughter. The dad gets killed by some government organisation because he's trying to whistle blow on some military atrocity, and then she has to go and live with Michael Ironside in the Canadian woods, and then there's a siege takes place, and then you've got like Brad Fiedel's sort of basically just doing Terminator music. But I'll try and find the name of that film for you, because you love that.
That sounds great.
Is there just wrapping up the X-Files chat, do you think you will watch any more of the X-Files? I know it's a commitment, but has this sparked off an interest in watching it again?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it just brought back loads of memories. Do you know, it's like such... I loved the X-Files so much for a very, very distinctive period of my life.
Yeah.
It definitely reminded me of what I liked about it. And I think that X-Files is quite kind in a way. I suppose it's a bit like Harry Potter in a way, where it starts off very kind of like, this is your story of the week, and then the further you go, I don't like Harry Potter. Why have I used that as an example?
Great, I'm pleased you don't.
But later on with Harry Potter, it all becomes kind of like, oh my God, it's all connected and I can't fucking work it out. But like when it starts off, like you said, it's episodic. It's like a villain of the week, and it gets you into it. And then by the time you get later on, you kind of care a bit more. I'm definitely thinking about watching them all again. Whether I do, I'd probably be better. I'm a lot happier watching series when I know that they've ended.
Yeah, right.
Like, I felt like when Game of Thrones was going, I was like, oh, I'm not going to do all the homework. And then when it ended, everyone hated the ending. I was like, well, I'm glad I didn't. But then Breaking Bad was like, when that finished, I did it all in one go. And I was like, oh, I loved that. That was great. So I've got more of a chance of watching the X-Files than anything else. But I do find I'm better off with an hour. Maybe I'll watch the films then.
Yeah.
I'm better off with like an hour and a half, 2 hours. We do it all in one go. And that's it. If I watch an episode when I'm away from it, I never think, oh, I'll watch more of that.
What are you watching at the minute that you really liked? Any films or anything you're reading or any other recommendations?
I tell you what, I was watching. I was in a hotel the other day, and I had to go and do my sound check, and a film started, and it was called 23 Paces to Baker Street, and it's like an old 50s movie that was a little bit like something like The Man Who Knew Too Much or something like that. It felt really like an Alfred Hitchcock film. But I watched like 20 minutes, half an hour of it, and I was really like hooked. I was like, this sounds great, or this looks great. And then I had to go to do my sound check. So I've found it on YouTube for free, and it was on Film 4, and I found it on YouTube for free. So I'm sort of like watching it in 10-minute installments before I go to sleep.
Right.
But I love that. It's brilliant.
Believe Me is written and edited by me, Chris Boyd, with production support from Steve Marshall. The music is by Johnny Boyle, and our logo is by Russ Brown. If you like the show, please do hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you out there next time.